I spent 4 months crocheting strawberries to create this design by the mysterious Japanese artist only known as Sakizo. But who is Sakizo? Why cosplay a thing no one's heard of? And why so many strawberries? Today I'll try to answer that and do several other tedious sewing tasks, but first, let's thank today's sponsor, Merge Gardens, which I've been playing so much that I wanted to do a cosplay of it. But Merge Gardens is a free-to-play mobile game with kind of two gameplay aspects. There's your garden, where you merge eggs to get wildlife, and you merge flowers to get better nectar to unlock more garden. I just finally got a butterfly and a hog-nosed bat, and I'm way too excited about how cute they are. But eventually your wildlife gets tired, so that's when I play the other part of the gameplay, which is the puzzles. They're match 3 puzzles, but they get really challenging, especially if you're me and you didn't figure out that you can just tap on the power-ups to make them go. I failed quite a few of them. But I like that it's like half challenge your brain and half turn your brain off. But it's nice because if the puzzles get too hard, I just go play in the garden and it's very chill and calming, and after crocheting all those strawberries, it has been really nice to just go boop and have flowers appear on my phone. And I keep coming back for the level up goals, because when you level up, you get closer to unlocking the mysteries surrounding the garden. I really enjoy the mixed merging and matching gameplay. The main character straight up looks like me, and I really think you'll like it too. And you can try out Merge Gardens too by clicking the link in the description or using the QR code on screen right now. And if you use my link, it helps out the channel. So thanks again to Merge Gardens for sponsoring this video. Let's get back to talking about our mysterious illustrator. So a deep dive into Sakizo is a little difficult because she just seems to be really private. There's not a single photo of her on any of her social medias, and I literally only know her gender from her DeviantArt. And I want to respect that privacy, so I'm not going to focus on who she is or how she is or when, where, why she is, but as for what she's done, that is where we will go. What we do know is she's a Japanese illustrator. Her name is probably Saki, with the zo being a possessive qualifier, but I don't really know. Please tell me if you know what this kanji means. Don't know how good of a source romanji desu is, but she has published art books, she's done art exhibitions, she's done collaborations with Lolita fashion companies, including dresses and tights, and fittingly, a lot of the stuff that I think inspires her is the same stuff that inspired Lolita fashion. Lolita fashion is a Japanese alternative or street fashion that takes inspiration from European Rococo fashion and shoujo manga for primarily ruffles, lace, and bows. It grew out of the goth fashion scene in Japan in the 90s and morphed over the decades into a style now primarily known for poofy skirts, ruffles, lace, and bows. It has absolutely nothing to do with the Novikov book of the same name. It's not a cosplay. It's also not a sex thing. It's fashion. Don't remember how we got here? Well, Sakizo appears to be inspired by the same things, if not the fashion itself. Her art takes all of its principal characteristics to the max. Tons of ruffles, lace, bows, trims, flowers, strawberries. Did I tell you I crocheted 56 strawberries? So why crochet the strawberries? It obviously would have been a lot faster to cast them in resin, but if they were resin, they'd be really heavy, and these are really, really lightweight. I also really like that crocheting them means that they're all different. They all have an organic quality like strawberries do, and I think the crocheted texture looks so much like actual strawberry skin. It's just too cute to not at least try to do it this way. The other thing is amigurumi, this particular crocheting technique, is a Japanese technique, and seeing as this is designed by a Japanese artist, it all just kind of fits together. But on like a technical level, like how well did I do crocheting these, I really don't have a reference point for that because I'm a beginner crocheter. So this time, I didn't just call an expert, I called in a deity.
Hi everybody, my name is Yarn Guys Cosplay, and I'm a crochet cosplayer. I've been crocheting since I was 8 years old, and when I got into cosplaying, I thought we're all supposed to be like sewing, and I learned very quickly that I hate sewing, with a burning passion. But I still wanted to cosplay, so one of my friends was like, what if you just crochet your cosplays? And I was like, well, let me try. And it has been 8 years since, and now I have a whole crochet business, and I've been crocheting cosplays for almost a decade. Crocheting is basically like knitting, but the major difference is, one, you use one crochet hook. Crochet cannot be mass produced by a machine, knitting can, and crocheters for some reason always lose their crochet hooks. I don't know why, it's just a thing. So the history of it, I feel like, is I've seen like, people talk about the origins of it being French. I know crochet is a French word, but it doesn't necessarily have French origins. If you go over like, I know in Ghana, Nigeria, there is a huge crochet population over there. It's very common for crocheters in Africa. Like every time I look up crochet, if I see like anything like an intricate wedding dress, it's usually from overseas. It's usually from Africa. You'll see like, just pockets of like crocheters in different parts of the world. And we're all doing the same thing. We don't know how we got started. We all had a mom that went to a library one day and was just like, hey, here. And now you've been crocheting your whole life.
Yeah. So now I'm gonna ask you about the crochet that I did. Here is one of the early ones.
Oh my god.
Which, as you can see, has these big old holes in the top. But the thing I wanted to show you is this is the same pattern.
You could market them as like, non-GMO strawberries versus GMO strawberries.
Yeah! Why does this happen?
My first question for you is, did you use the same crochet hook the first time?
No.
Okay, so the thing with crocheting is like you have hook sizes, and if you crochet with like a 6, that one is going to be much bigger than if you crochet with like, a 5. The other thing too is your tension. If you're really tight with your stitches, like, you'll compress the stitches down and they'll be a lot smaller. And if you're really loose with your stitches, they'll like, have more space. They'll be a little bit open, a little bit more airy. So if you're crocheting with the same hook, you can still get 2 different sizes, because if you're really taut with your stitches, they're tighter, they're going to be smaller. If you're really loose with your stitches, they're going to be a little bit bigger because there's more wiggle room.
So I want to ask, just in general, I'll show you a bunch of these that I have on my desk.
How many strawberries have you made?
56.
Oh my god.
Of the ones I have here, I just wanted to kind of show them to you and ask, how did I do?
Have you noticed that like your crocheting like gets better like with each strawberry?
Yeah, it did.
Yeah. I would say like you did great, because the fact you've done 56, like one thing I tell people is that like you could get a dress out of me faster than you could get an amigurumi out of me. I will rather crochet a ball gown before sitting down and crocheting 56 strawberries, because the way the ADHD is set up, I get bored very quickly. By the 4th strawberry, I'm just like, how many more to do? Absolutely not. I'm going to throw some blueberries just because. I'm just impressed that you stuck with it, because like I feel like a lot of people underestimate how much time goes into crocheting. Literally every beginner crocheter, the moment they get a singular stitch down, they're like, I'm gonna make a queen size blanket. It's not gonna, my queen size blanket is still in the closet. Okay, make a scarf, make a sweater, do something smaller for beginner crocheters. With crocheting, it's very wrist intensive and it's very easy to catch carpal tunnel. And when I first started crocheting, everyone was using these kind of crochet hooks. They're long metal crochet hooks. Do not use these when you're first crocheting. The crochet hooks you need to use are the ones that have the thicker handles, because they're safer on your wrist, they're a lot easier in your hands, and you won't catch carpal tunnel as much. Y'all can follow me online at YG Cosplay on all social media platforms. I have a shop at ygcosplay.com where you get this wonderful hat. It is One Piece theme. I have a bunch of other One Piece theme hats because Dragon Ball Z, Naruto, count your days. We coming for you.
Also, this isn't my crochet pattern. I'm not going to give you the pattern because it's a video that already exists on YouTube, so you can go check out that person's content. But I will tell you how I did the stems and the leaves. So all the greenery is just felt. The stems themselves are just felt that I folded over onto itself and then did a zigzag stitch. Probably could have been a little fancier and sewed a tube in felt, but I really didn't want to turn a felt tube inside out. So then the leaves are just cut out with pinking shears to mimic the quality that strawberry leaves have. And to get all this stuff onto the strawberries, I had just been hand sewing it on, but I think this is a good opportunity to talk about when it is and is not appropriate to use hot glue. Number 1, will you see it? Hot glue is messy and it gets everywhere, so if there's any chance that you're going to be able to see it, you probably should just sew it. I was able to get these on with hot glue with none of the hot glue showing through because there's a big enough surface area of the leaves that it just covers all of it. Number 2, hot glue is permanent. And not in the glue sense, in the sense that if you put it onto fabric, it's never gonna come out of the fabric. And it's gonna leave that hard glue surface that's really hard to sew through. So if you wanted to take that thing off and sew it later, you can't. There's a blob there now. And number 3, strength. If sewing it is gonna be stronger than gluing it, and you need that piece to be really strong, you should probably sew it. The big thing with hot glue is it's really at its best when it can soak up into stuff, and it can soak into sort of fibrous things like yarn and like felt. These are all hot glued, and this is how strong it is. So I hot glued most of the strawberries. The ones for up near the Bertha that are going to be really prevalent, I did hand sew just to make sure they're a little bit nicer, but with all the rest of them, they all got hot glued. But those are my 56 crocheted strawberries. I did start these in December before I went to Hallmat. This was the first one. I don't think I would ever choose to do this much crochet again. There were some days where I could get 2 or 3 done, but for the most part, I could get like 1 to half of one of them to none of them done in a day. And I am happy that I did it this way because I think they're really cute and I think they're going to be more durable. But those are my strawberries, the source of my suffering for 4 months. So now let's talk more about the artist that did this to me. I would speculate that Sakizo's most influential works were absolutely her art books. The first one came out in 2007 and was titled Sign That Glitters, but even with the first book, we started to see cosplays of it. And now I scoured the internet, and it is possible that someone did a cosplay of one of her designs before this, but on the public internet, the earliest instance of a Sakizo cosplay that I was able to find was this entry into what appears to be an online costume contest of a European cosplayer as the devil design from Sign That Glitters. I think this cosplay is from 2011. I didn't write this down, I should have written it down. But the first book is not really what got the community going. I think arguably that was Girl Meets Sweets, and Romantic Jewels, and Fantasy of the Dream. And I got all of those for this video. So this is Girl Meets Sweets. This came out in 2008, but again, we really didn't start to see lots of cosplays until like 2012 through 2014. And one of the things I kept running into when I was doing research was this 2013 blog post by Angela Clayton for her Royal Milk Tea cosplay, which isn't from Girl Meets Sweets, but in her blog post, she even says that Sakizo, at this point in 2013, is already infamous for her food designs, i.e. the Girl Meets Sweets series. Now there's like four, I think, editions of Girl Meets Sweets. This is the very first one, the 2008 one. And you'll notice pretty quickly that her art did kind of develop over the years. And a lot of the early work is, and not to say this is a bad thing, but it's very naked. It's a lot of like fantastical versions of like historical underwear. And I think maybe that's the reason why with this first one, we didn't really see a whole lot of cosplays just because not everybody likes to be that naked. But a lot of the popular Girl Meets Sweets designs came from the later versions. And going back to Angela Clayton, that whole blog post was about her wearing it to Katsucon that year. And Katsucon has historically been like the place to wear a Sakizo. Katsucon is held at the Gaylord National Harbor, which is a really, really beautiful venue. And it has this kind of regal, opulent vibe that obviously fits with the regal, opulent Rococo designs that Sakizo does. And when I asked my Discord how they found out about Sakizo, a lot of people said it was back in 2013 with Angela Clayton's coverage of this cosplay. But even back in 2012, I was able to find pictures of people at Katsucon 2012 doing, guess what, the food-themed designs from Sakizo, including a young sunset dragon, who then went on to become a beloved fan artist in her own right. And that's kind of the other thing Sakizo did. She opened the door to have fan art and fan artists be more respected in the community. It used to be that, especially in the competition world, if you were entering a costume contest, you were not allowed to do a fan work or an original design. And I speculate to think that what happened was that artists like Sakizo and Sunset Dragon and Hannah Alexander and Desi Desu, they raised the bar to the point that they kind of had to change the rules. And especially in a competition setting, a lot of character designs, say from like anime, because of the nature of the art form, anime designs have to be relatively simple so that they can actually be animated. You wouldn't want to animate a Sakizo design and have the animators suffer through drawing all those ruffles. But fan artists can do whatever they want and only worry about making the cosplayers suffer. Speaking of suffering. So yeah, about that lattice pattern, I could not find a lace that was wide enough that looked anything like that. So I have to do it myself. Bottom tier is kind of going to be a cakewalk because it's just a straight panel. So that lattice pattern can be just straight. But this top tier, that's a circle skirt, has already proven to be a pain in the ass. So I already went through and I marked with my quilting ruler where the lattice is gonna be and where my seam allowance is gonna be. And then I tried to start marking the lattice and I very quickly realized that, oh shit, this thing is curved, and just using the 90-degree angle on the quilting ruler was not going to cut it. So I had to make myself a template. Now I'm not gonna go into huge detail about how I got myself a curved lattice. The short answer is Illustrator, and the long answer is it's a pattern brush that I made the size of the skirt. And then tracing it would have been a lot easier if I had a light box, but just putting it under the fabric and tracing it pretty loosely worked pretty well. So now I have the full circle skirt with the whole lattice pattern traced onto it. So now I have to do the lattice. Here's the plan. I've got some 1/4-inch twill tape and I'm gonna try something new. I got some double needles for my FOF and we're gonna see if we can put the twill tape on with a double needle. So not every machine is gonna be able to do a twin needle, and if your machine can't, you can still do this. You would just have to do it the way I did the music staff on my Miku, where I went down one side and then the other. But I've never done this before, so I am gonna practice. I have some scraps and a little piece of twill tape, and I have my little twin needle. I'm gonna put this on, and now I need to thread it, and I need to double thread it. Just got some good old Coats and Clark. So on mine, I have my two thingies, right? And then over here is the thing I have to pay attention to. There's actually a little fin in here that's gonna separate the threads. So if I put this one in, thread it like normal, and then when I get to the fin, I'm supposed to like go on one side. Okay, there's one, and then this top one goes in, and then this one goes on the other side of the little fin. That should be it. So I guess let's try it. Okay. That did not sound good. Okay. Well, this is a pin tuck. What did I do wrong here? So that means there's a tension issue. But the thing about this machine is it has like auto tension. Like I'm not actually able to change the tension, I don't think. But what I can do is help out this fabric. Maybe some tearaway stabilizer will take this from a pin tuck to 2 stitches. Round 2. There's a stitch jam. Bitch, I don't see a stitch jam. Round 2. Oh yeah, that helped. Okay. But that's what I want. So what we've learned is this is gonna require tearaway stabilizer. So I guess now, round 3, I'll try it with the twill tape. Now, lining this up is gonna be hard. Okay. I feel like that looks great. So that's great news that works, but the bad news is now I have to sew an entire lattice pattern onto 2 tiers of this entire skirt, 1 strip of twill tape at a time. At least we got the twin needle to work. But yeah, I'm gonna be doing that for several days and using a whole lot of tearaway stabilizer on the back. I mean, using the twin needle is literally gonna make it take half the time that it would have taken. And I kind of wish I had been brave when I was making my Miku and tried this out for the lines on the music staff, but that wasn't a huge pattern and this is a really big pattern and it's gonna look really pretty when it's done, but it's gotta get done. And it's gonna take forever to do. Okay, well, that actually only took me 2 days, but oh my god, look at it. It's standing up on its own like this because I haven't taken the tearaway stabilizer off of it yet, but we'll get rid of that. That'll be a whole thing. If you look real hard, there's a couple spots where, you know, it's not a perfect lattice. Like this one here, a little more of a rectangle than a square right here. But for the most part, it's kind of perfect. I just want to keep looking at it. It's like satisfying. So now I have not yet cut out the bottom tier, so I'm gonna go cut that out on the living room floor. Hey, actually I can cut this on the table, holy sh**. But I already cut a piece of this off, and I really just wanted to show you the satisfaction of what a brand new pair of scissors can do. So I finished marking the bottom tier, and then I realized that the top tier had 4 panels, but this one has 7, and I'm a little upsetty. Okay, so I finished both tiers, and I got all of the stabilizer ripped off of both of them, but even with the stabilizer ripped off, this is ugly, so I want to cover it up. I also need to hem them at this point. So to kill 2 birds with 1 stone, what I want to do is a hem facing. And a hem facing is just like a regular facing, a small piece of lining that goes at the edge of a garment, and in this case, it's a hem. So for this, I want it to start at the hem, and I want it to end up here above the lattice to cover all of this ugly. So this one I already did. So this one was pretty simple because, like I've said, this one is just a straight panel. So the facing got to just be a straight panel. So all I did for this one was sew the facing to the fabric, right sides together at the hem, and then I actually understitched this. And understitching is basically where you splay everything open and sew your seam allowance to your lining so that all of that stuff kind of sits neatly and you don't ever have to worry about it bunching up or getting weird. So I did that, and then I flipped everything over, pressed everything, I pressed this edge over, and then all I had to do was sew another straight stitch on top of the lace, which completely hid that straight stitch, and secured it to the back. So now I have a beautiful, clean hem facing that is pink. Okay, now we get to the part that is weird. So again, this one was simple because straight panel on straight panel, right? Now we get to the weird one. So this one is a cut as a circle skirt, so I can't put a straight panel on the edge of this or it would get really weird. Unfortunately, it still got really weird because this is my hem facing that I have cut. I needed to cut it on the bias, and when you cut stuff on the bias, you obviously use more fabric. But I completely forgot to buy fabric to use as the hem facing, so I just used what I had in my stash, and I did not have enough of this pink, so it's also gingham. None of this is important. This is just what happens when I forget to buy fabric. Anyway, this one had to be bias tape. That's the only important thing you need to know. I might need to do the top part of this where I secure it to the back by hand because it's curved, and just because it's bias tape doesn't mean it's going to be able to go up to the top and fit correctly without me doing some shit and like folding stuff. We'll see. I don't know. It might be a little weird in there. So I'm gonna gather them both differently, again, because the top tier needs special treatment. But for this big one, we're gonna do something that I did for my first Sakizo cosplay, and that is gathering with a couching stitch and embroidery floss. And a couching stitch is any stitch that goes over top of a thing, really. So while we're doing a zigzag stitch on the machine, we call it a couching stitch because it's going over a thing, and that thing being some embroidery floss. So I'm gonna put my couching foot onto the machine and we're gonna do a couching stitch. But I will add that I really like the metallic embroidery floss because, you know, it's like made of plastic, and that means it's like not as fibrous as regular embroidery floss, which makes it easier for it to not get caught by the actual zigzag stitch, which is important because we want to be able to do this. So the bottom tier's gathered. Now I need to do the top tier. And this one I'm just going to gather up with a set of 2 parallel really long straight stitches, and then I'm just going to grab the bobbin thread and gather it all up that way. I have apparently been doing ruffles the dumb way because you are supposed to do 2 parallel lines because it just makes everything sit flatter on the top. All the ruffles I've done previously on the channel, I haven't done this and I've had a problem with it, but I did try it with this and it works so much better to just do 2 of them. So just do 2 of them. So I was about to gather this up and then I realized that I want pockets in this and I've completely forgotten about them as usual. So if I was doing this in like the historical fashion way, I would just have a slit in one of the seams of the skirt, and then I would slip my hand into that and I would have an 18th century pocket like tied to my waist. That would be pretty sick. However, the way I cut these skirt panels, there's not going to be a seam on the waist, so I'm going to do something really not historically accurate at all. Why I don't know why I keep telling you that it's historically inaccurate, because the whole goddamn thing is because it's a cosplay, but you know, being inspired by historical fashion is fun. I can't be inspired about the pockets though. What is inspiring me is the way you do a zippered pocket, but without the zipper. Okay, so I've made my pocket and I have marked on the fabric where the pocket's gonna go. And so this is gonna be they're both the inside of the pocket, right? They're both going on the inside, but this side is the back side of the pocket. This is the front of the pocket. And on the back side, look, I added extra little phone pocket, so that's fun. So we wanna ignore this one right now. So I'm gonna pin one side of the pocket bag to the right side of the skirt, and then I'm gonna take this over to the machine, and all I'm gonna do is straight stitch down one side of this line, not on the line, but one side. I'm gonna give myself a little point at the bottom, and then go back up the other side. So now that this stitch is in, what we can do is cut down this line that we originally drew, and then we just take all this and shove it into the crack we just made. And you can kind of see where we're going with this. Oh, that looks dirty. So now what we gotta do to make it look not like a labia is press it flat, and then it'll look like a little crack. I'll stop being gross. So from this side, all we gotta do is take the back side of the pocket bag, put that right sides together with this pocket bag, and then literally all you do is sew straight stitch around it. And once I sew that up, I will have some absolutely giant pockets, and then I can actually gather up the top tier. So let's do that finally. And that's really simple. You just grab both of the bobbin threads, and you want to grab the bobbin thread because the way a sewing machine works is the top thread is actually kind of acting as a loop through the bobbin thread, and the bobbin thread is actually just going straight. So you always want to grab the bobbin thread and not the top thread. If you try to do this with the top thread, it's not going to work. Okay, so to finish the bottom tier, I have my yoke and my egg white. I'm gonna take my egg white and I'm gonna put it all the way around the edges of the yoke, right sides together. And then I just gotta pin all that down, do one more straight stitch all the way around the edges, and we will have an egg. So because the yoke of my egg is a circle skirt, I need to let this hang for a little bit, at least overnight, because what's gonna happen is the parts of the yoke that are on the bias are gonna stretch out, and once that happens, the hem's gonna be really weird, and we already hemmed it. So our only choice to even it out is to even it out here at the waist. Okay, so I left her hanging all weekend long, so if she has stretched out at all, that sounds dirty. If she stretched out at all on the bias, then it should have happened already. So I'm gonna let her go from the hanger so I can get to leveling her at the waist, which I think historically is what they did. I don't know. I'm not a historical expert. I just watch a lot of people make stuff on YouTube. Okay, so I got the top tier onto the waistband and I measured it, and it's not quite right. There's a couple places where it's 19 inches and a couple places where it's like 19.5 inches. But we're not building a bridge here. If I gotta change it, I'll squidge it and hand sew it. But I did want to show you how I'm gonna get both of these into the same waistband. Go ahead and baste the top tier on, and then we're gonna get our bottom tier. And you're gonna put this inside of this. You're gonna bring it up to the waistband. And now I'm just gonna pin it in there. So when it comes out, this one's on the top, this one's on the bottom. And they're both in the same waistband. I just want to say this part sucks and I'm really annoyed and frustrated. Okay, well, I'm just gonna put it on the dress form and see what happens. So, okay, looking at it in person, I feel like it looks like a mess. The top tier looks shorter and the bottom tier looks too long. And the length is pretty correct, I think. I don't know, maybe it's just an optical illusion. Maybe I need to back the up, but what I do know is I need a break from this shit. And since if this is final, then all I need to do is whip stitch the back side of the waistband and add all the flowers and bows and strawberries and stuff. So I think what I'm gonna do is work on the bodice now, because I can't do this anymore. I'm so frustrated with this fucking skirt. Y'all ready to look at some books? So I already showed you some of Girl Meets Sweets, but the Romantic Jewels series has also been a big thing to cosplay. It's all humanized versions of gemstones, and yes, this came out before Steven Universe. This one came out in 2009, so long before Rebecca Sugar did all that to us. But like I said, as the years went on, we got less and less naked girls, and again, there's nothing wrong with being naked. I just think not everybody wants to be that naked, and not all cons let you be that naked. If you want to be that Nakey, be that Nakey. But the first Sakizo cosplay that I did, I actually did one of the romantic jewels. I did Diamond, but not the one in the book. I did a diamond that she drew as a promotional image for the tights designs, and I actually have the tights right here. So these are one of the pairs of tights, and I bought the tights to be a reference for the cosplay. I did end up kind of doing my own thing, but I also kind of just wanted a piece of the Lolita fashion that she's put out. They're super pretty. And the funny thing is, so in Lolita, we have this term colorway. It basically just refers to like the certain color flavor of a thing. And these tights came in 2 colorways, a white and a black. The diamond that I did was drawn with these tights, but the black version of the tights, she drew on the amethyst design that was made and worn by Casey Renee Cosplay when she became the first and only sewist to win TwitchCon. So I like to say, because they're wearing the same tights in different colorways, that they're sister designs. Anyway, one of the big popular ones that people do is I've seen a lot of the pearl design. The big one I've seen a whole lot of is actually turquoise, and the male turquoise as well. There's a Romantic Jewels Gentleman's, which is all the gemstones as boys. And in this book, actually, this is one of the newer books. This is from like 2 years ago. It's called The Engraved Witch in a Fantasyland, and this one is very different. This one is actually like a storybook. Like, it has writing in it. It's in Japanese. I can't read it, but I'm still learning hiragana and katakana. Anyway, this one has a bunch of new designs and a bunch of the older designs. So if you want like a really good, just like catalog of Sakizo's work, this is a good book to get. But in here, somewhere, here's one of the boys. Lovely boys. So there's lovely boys too. But a lot of the really iconic designs came from this one, Fantasy of the Dream. This specifically has the witches in it. There's the West Witch, who is this one on the cover. The Witch Apprentice, or Lotta, who is so cute. Then the East Witch and the Ice Witch. Oh, and then it also has this character who is probably Sakizo's most drawn character. This is Julieta. Julieta is basically the protagonist of this book and these stories. But yeah, through the years, there have obviously been some favorite designs of hers that she's drawn over and over again. And the one I'm cosplaying now has been drawn more than once. And you may have noticed I've been showing you both images, and that I'm not really doing a one-to-one recreation of either of them. I'm kind of just mashing them together. But in terms of the bodice, I am absolutely more so going for the first one, because I just think it's prettier. For the bodice, I have already done a bunch of stuff. So to catch you up, I did pattern this myself, but I did it as a whole video just for patrons. But my Patreon is a pay-as-you-can, so if you want to see that, you can just pay $1 and you can see it. But if you want to support me even more, you can give me $5. Anyway, these panels are cut out of the dupe peony and then the white duck cloth that I was supposed to get for the corset, but FedEx refused to bring it to me until way later. The white duck is finally here, and it has made its way into the bodice, and I just flatlined these with the serger. The only thing important to note about these side panels is these points here are actually where the sleeves are gonna get attached. So what I went ahead and did was I attached some boning channels right here. There are gonna be more bones in this, but these are the only ones that needed to go like in the middle of a panel. Everything else is gonna just be in the seam allowance. But I'm gonna ignore all this right now because it's boring. Here's the Bertha. We'll get to that later. That's gonna be a nightmare. Right now, we have something kind of exciting because this is our center front, and our center front is getting some very fun decorations. So I got a bunch of lace for this, and one of the things I got was the AliExpress strawberry lace, because of course I did. And that is gonna go here. Yeah. So that's gonna be my center front. And then these are gonna go like this. And then on top of all this is strawberries. So I also went ahead and did some embroidered strawberries. So I didn't want to go with the beaded ones I've done before because I kind of wanted these to match a little closer to the yarn strawberries. So I went with regular dimensional embroidery. To get the little mound, I just sewed a little piece of felt over like a little felt blob, which was just a scrap piece. And then I did do like a little beaded border because I don't trust myself to get a clean edge in regular embroidery. And then all I did was satin stitches across, added some darker thread to the sides for like a little shadow, gave them some seeds, and that's it. Regular embroidery, just like crochet, is so easily accessible. You can get the floss for usually under $1, and it's just one of the best ways to add fancy details for hardly any money. But none of this is attached yet, and this isn't flatlined yet, because all of this needs to go onto this piece before I flatline it to this, so that way when it's on the bodice, all that stuff is encased within that flatline layer. So the first thing I need to do is sew all this lace on just by machine, and then I'm going to need to cut out my little strawberries, figure out where I want to place these, and then I'm not going to sew them on yet, because I'm actually going to need to hoop this whole thing up and put hand embroidered leaves and stems onto this. So this stitch I used for the leaves, I think it's called a fly stitch, and it's where you go from one side of the leaf to the other and you leave yourself a loop, and then you go through the loop and secure the bottom of the loop to the middle of the leaf, and that makes it kind of end up in an angle, which kind of makes it look like a leaf. Okay, so I finished my little leaves and stems, and now I'm gonna put my strawberries on, and so all I'm gonna do is pin those in and sew those on. And then I have all these little baby leaves, and these are just felt cut with pinking shears. And then I also have these little strawberry flowers, and I was told several times in the Strawberry Miku videos that I was calling these daisies, and that they're not daisies, they're strawberry flowers. But these are just felt, and then I do a little gathering stitch on the back, and sew the little pearl on, and then we got little flowers. So I'm gonna finish sewing all this stuff on, and once that's done, we can flatline this one to its duck layer. And I actually went ahead and put a bone through the middle of the duck cloth layer, because I always forget I probably need some kind of center bone, especially when it's a point like this. Probably gonna need a bone here to stay pointed. Once these are all on and flatlined together, we can sew the bodice together. So finally I can sew all these panels together, and I am giving myself a full inch of seam allowance here, because I'm also going to use the seam allowances as the boning channels. And with all of them sewed together, I pressed the whole thing, and now I have all of these lovely big 1-inch seam allowances that I'm gonna turn into boning channels. There's two ways you could do this. You could either, if you're fine with having the stitch lines on the outside, you could just do a top stitch, sew those in, you'd have a boning channel, but I don't want any visible stitches on the outside. So what I'm gonna do is I'm going to do it by hand so that I can sew my little bit of seam allowance to just the duck cloth layer and whip stitch that all in, which is also what I did to these, because I forgot to sew those boning channels to the duck layer before I flatlined them. But while I was doing that, I discovered a way to make sure I'm not getting this extra layer in there and that I'm just sewing it to the duck, and that was to take like a steel bone, just an extra steel bone, and stick it in your fabric, and that just helps separate it enough, and it gives you a hard surface so that you're not ever going all the way through. In terms of bones, this does not need a whole lot of boning, but it does need some because it's got to hold up those sleeves and its own weight. So we don't need any steel boning, and we also don't need this super fancy plastic whalebone. So I'm gonna go to the hardware store and I'm gonna buy those big chunky zip ties, because especially for a thing like this, that stuff works really well. Again, don't ever go for that really cheap like featherweight boning that you can buy by the roll at Joann's. That stuff is worthless. Legit, I cannot think of any use case for that where there is not a better alternative at a better price. Just don't buy it. Okay, gotta say, I think she looks really fucking pretty. Like, this is so pastoral princess. The skirt still looks super weird to me, but the bodice is, I love it. So that's awesome. The boning is all in, and now I need to do something about the top and the bottom. And I think what I'm gonna do for the bottom specifically, I'm gonna make some piping. So I could just go buy piping, but it's always cheaper to just use what you have. So I did a little test. Here's my little piping piece. But all you need for piping is bias tape and some kind of rope. I think you can also use like yarn, but I have this rope. But all I'm gonna do is I'm going to take a strip of this bias tape, I'm gonna unfold it completely, and then I'm gonna iron the whole thing flat. Then all I gotta do is fold it around my rope and run a straight stitch down it. And now I'm using a foot that I think is a piping foot. It's very similar to my adjustable zipper foot, but it's a little smaller. And I think when I found it, the package said piping foot. So I think it's a piping foot, but it's just a little foot that holds everything on one side. I've never actually done piping before, but I'm pretty sure that all you do is put it on the right side of the fabric, facing up this way, because what's gonna happen is we're gonna sew a stitch here, and then we're gonna flip all that over. So I'm gonna go ahead and pin all of it. Oh, and by the way, a little update. I tried the bodice on with my corset on finally, and I realized I couldn't get the backs to close. And I want this to close with like hooks and bars, so I need a little bit of an overlap. And that was actually not a huge deal because remember I made the seam allowances super big? Well, I was able to just, at the side seam, take it from 1 inch to, what is that, 1/4 inch? And that gave me plenty of room at the back for that overlap. So if you're ever unsure if a pattern you've made is gonna work, just give it really big seam allowance, because that's why we call it seam allowance. It allows you enough room to make a seam, but it also allows you to make things bigger or smaller. The bigger you make your seam allowance, the bigger you can make the thing later. Okay, so I'm pretty sure the way the corner works is that you just cut it. So I'm just gonna do a little snippy snip. I also gotta be careful here not to get any of these bones. Oops! Probably a good time to tell you to break a needle on that like button. Okay, I broke the needle on the foot and not a bone. If you're using an adjustable foot, always make sure the needle is in the right position before you sew. And then I think at the corner here, what you're supposed to do is sew past where you cut. And then I think what you do is you turn everything and then you start from here and then keep going. Okay, so now that's on. I think all I do now is just fold everything. Oh, that looks bad. What happened here? This part looks bad, look. See how it's like not butted up and you can see the other stitch? I'm gonna undo that and do that again without. I literally have to sew it like I put the camera here and then I do this. I'm gonna do that without the camera in my way and we're gonna fix it. Okay, I think I fixed it, kinda. Still not great, but I mean, not competing in this. Doesn't matter. And why is that so stuck? Okay, that bone got sewn through. That's kind of an issue. So because I don't have a traditional lining, I think what I'm gonna have to do is fold all of this up and then hand sew all of this in to the duck cloth layer. But for the top, because the Bertha's going on top of there, you're never really gonna see it. So I think I'm just gonna do the top in white bias tape. That's mostly it for the bodice. So I want to rewind back to 2014 and tell you where I was with cosplay back then. So I had been doing cosplay for a couple years, but 2014 was when I started doing bigger builds. And I had no idea who Sakizo was, but my biggest cosplay influences were cosplay YouTube. I was watching Mango Cyrene, who now goes by Fawnina. I was watching Acceleration. I was watching Deja Vu. But the giants whose shoulders I stood on the most were Kamui and Kinpatsu, because my first big build was armor. I had done a couple smaller cosplays before, but it wasn't until I made this Elder Scrolls Online cosplay that I had the experience of going to a con and having people really want to take my picture. It was the first time I ever felt like the diamond of the season, and literally nobody even knew what that cosplay was from. People kept asking if I was Shredder from Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. But armor has this attention-grabbing power, and I think anybody that's done armor will tell you that even simple armor builds garner a lot of attention, especially back then. But a lot of the times, sewing is just not like that. When I wore my D&D character to Dragon Con, not a single person asked for my photo, and that's okay. I don't just wear cosplays to get photos, but one of the most relatable things I have ever heard at a con was a girl asked her friend, "Hey, what do you want to do now?" To which she replied, I think I just want to go walk around the dealer's room and have people tell me I look pretty. Absolutely sane. Anyway, sewing as opposed to armor when it's simple is just not inherently interesting to the untrained eye. But Sakizo's designs really give sewists a playground of detail to really let their skills shine in a way that anyone can understand. And like, I know when I look at a well-tailored school uniform that took a lot of work and that is really impressive, but your average person doesn't know that. But anybody can look at a Sakizo cosplay and be like, wow, that's incredible. Armor will probably always get more attention than sewing just because it's a newer technique. People think armor's cool. You don't see people walking around on the street in armor. But when you use a thread to combine pieces of woven thread, you can't help but feel this connection to all of human history, because we've been doing this forever. Anyway, let's finish this thing. Okay. So these are like a 6-piece sleeve. So what I have on the table is my little sleeve puzzle. So this one here is the outermost flounce, and it is just the same pattern as the actual sleeve pattern, just a little shorter. And then I went through and I machine scalloped the whole thing. I did these scallops the exact same way that I did them in my, was that in the wig video for Miku? It must have been. Those little hair flounces I did. This is the same way. It's just a machine scalloped, and then I fray checked the whole thing and cut all of it off. So that wasn't too bad. Then underneath that, we have the lacy flounce that's going under that. So this one is just white chiffon with the strawberry lace on it. And then at the very bottom, we have the actual sleeve pattern. So this one is actually going to be the puff sleeve. Then below that, I have a channel for the elastic to go through, because I do want it to be elastic right here, because it's just going to be more comfy that way. That's going to go in between them, and it's also going to serve to gather them up a little more. And then down here, we have the lower arm flounces. So this one is just the dupe peony cut as a circle, and I machine scalloped this one too. And then underneath that, we have the same circle cut out in white chiffon. So now to solve my little sleeve puzzle. So what I want to do is I want to put these 3 together, and instead of gathering them up individually, I want to go ahead and baste them all 3 together, and then I can gather them all up at the same time. So now that they're together, I'm going to do a gathering stitch on the bottom of just this one. So I'm going to ignore those 2 and do a gathering stitch just on the actual sleeve. So now I just got to get this gathered down to where it'll go around my arm snugly, but not too tight, because then it'll restrict arm movement. And then I want to gather this down to the length of this, because this is going to do the majority of the gathering, because this is where the elastic is going to be. And we're going to sew this onto this. So that's together. So now I'm going to get my lower sleeve, and I'm just going to basically do the same thing I did to the upper sleeve and sew these 2 together around the tops. And then I'm going to take this and sew it to the bottom of this band. But once that's attached, I can try it on. So I pinned up the side and I shoved some felt in here. So I mean, it's a sleeve, that's for sure, but it doesn't really look like the picture. The first problem is that I can't see the nice puff sleeve, right? It's under here, and it looks good, but it's getting covered by these. So these are too long. And then the other thing is this top one isn't quite as gathered as I would like it to be. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take out all the stitches at the top here, and I'm just gonna shorten both of these by about 3 inches, redo everything I did before. I think once I do that, I'll be a little happier with it. Okay, so I haven't quite finished it because this is all just pinned together, but I shortened it and I think it looks a lot nicer because now you can see that poof on the bottom. What I ended up doing was ruffling these 2 tiers together, but not with this one. So they're gathered independently. And because I have no confidence in myself at this point to like successfully sew them together correctly, I think what I'm going to do is just sew them together by hand. And I think what I'm going to do to seal the top of this, again, because this will be underneath the Bertha, I think I'm just gonna cover all this nasty stuff with bias tape. I do like it. It is nice and puffy. And what I really like is, I'll show you a little preview. The Bertha is not made yet, but I have made pieces of it. And that is a stupid amount of ruffles. So I'm gonna finish the other sleeve and then we can move on to the Bertha. Happy Bertha Day! Okay, for anybody that's lost, the Bertha is the thing that goes right here. And what I have on the table is all of the pieces of it. So I've already done a bunch of stuff. This here is the ruffle that goes on the bottom. This one is the ruffle that goes on the top, and it is literally just a little strip of the dupioni that I scalloped by machine and then pleated up. And then this stuff here is like the main part of the Bertha. This is gonna be the inside, it's just the duck cloth. And I also don't think I trust this to stand up by itself. So I've also cut out some horsehair braid, because I think what I'm gonna do is take the horsehair braid and attach it to the duck cloth layer, and that'll hopefully maybe give it enough structure to hold itself up. So I got the horsehair braid on there. I don't know if it'll make a big difference. I don't know if it's a bad idea, but now I'm gonna try to get this on there. So I think I have to do this kind of weird, because like this is the inside of it, and then the top piece is gonna go on top of this. So I think I need to do it like right side to wrong side. So I'm sewing the wrong side of this one to the right side of this one, because then it's gonna like flip and be like that. I'm gonna do a really long basting stitch just in case this is wrong. I got this done with the help of our sweet baby boy Munchie. So now I'm gonna unfold it and see if it worked. Okay, because yeah, this part's gonna face my body, so that's what we wanted. Yeah. So now I gotta do the same thing to this one. All right, I got that one on too, and look at it. It looks like a very frilly Hot Wheels track. Kind of love it already. Okay, now I gotta do the long and tedious part of finishing one more goddamn lattice. This one's not gonna be in twill tape. I'm gonna do this, I think, with a thing that my FOF can do. It can actually do a thing where it will do one decorative stitch and then another decorative stitch, or a straight stitch. So I think what I'm gonna do is on one direction of the lattice, do all straight stitches. And then I'm gonna go back through and do a sequenced stitch to where I get a flower at all of the intersections. Because I have one decorative stitch that does kind of match the other flowers in the design. Woo! That's done. So now I have to figure out how to get this onto this. I think there's a couple different ways I could do this by machine, but I don't think I trust myself to do that. And then the other thing is I think I do want to put some beads at the center of these flowers. So I think what I'm gonna do is sew it all on by hand. But how am I gonna do that? I think I'm gonna fold all this up, secure this seam allowance to these ruffles with like a whip stitch, and then I'm gonna flip everything back over, and I think I'm just gonna secure the bottom by sewing the beads on. And yeah, that's not super ideal because then the stitches are gonna be on the back, but I think it'll be fine. So I ended up being able to actually get most of the stitches inside the Bertha just by going through that top layer and only going through all the layers to attach it at the bottom. Okay, lightning round. First of all, I had to turn myself into a human bow factory, so let me give you some tips on how to make a bunch of one thing really fast. Number one, chain piecing. This is a thing quilters do, and all you do is just keep sewing as you sew the piece. So once one loop was sewn, I just brought the next one up and kept going. I did the same thing to sew the ends of the bows together as well, and this does mean you then need to take the time to cut them all apart, but eventually I had 30 bow loops. The second tip I have is zip ties. Just the regular small ones. You could probably use even smaller ones, but instead of taking the time to neatly hand sew all of these loops and tails together, you can simply pinch them all together and zip tie them. This will get covered up by the bow knot anyway, so why not? And three, which you may have already noticed, do it assembly line style. Don't do one bow at a time. Do all the loops, then all the tails, then all of the attaching. It makes it go so much faster. Finally, the bonnet. Yes, this is getting skipped over because I have no right to be telling people how to make a bonnet when I patterned this out of thin digital air. Also, not going for a one-to-one recreation of any of the bonnets she's drawn. I just felt like with the size of the skirt, by the laws of Lolita, I needed something on my head to balance it out. But I will tell you two things. Pelion 71F remains stronger than Buckram, and please, for the love of God, if you make a bonnet, use a thimble. So my final thought has to do with what cosplay is normally and how doing a Sakizo is different, but also the same thing. And I know that sounds like nonsense, but stay with me. Cosplay normally is dressing up as a character from a piece of media that you like. Sometimes it is just because you like the character design, but a lot of the times there's a piece of media associated with that character that you feel a strong emotional connection to. But there's no 500 episode anime here, right? These are 1 or 2 watercolor illustrations, but somehow there's still a fandom. The people that do these love ruffles or historical fashion or Lolita fashion, and it usually means they really like making stuff. So in a way, the Sakizo fandom is just the sewing fandom. Not everybody likes sewing, and not everybody likes making stuff, especially when you're 2 strawberries in and you're already regretting it, or 2 yards into a 10-yard lattice. It feels like suffering. But when you take the time to put yourself into a cosplay by hook or by needle or by glue, there is no greater feeling than putting all of that on for the first time and getting to say, I did that. Because the fandom around these works is so small, one of the things I struggle with when I want to make one is this toxic mentality that I put onto myself, thinking, oh, I can't do this one because so-and-so already did it. But I have to stop doing that to myself, and we all do. Cosplay as an art form will always inherently have people doing the same designs, even in small fandoms. So remember, you can and should cosplay anything you want, no matter who's already done it, and that learning from the people that came before you is a good thing. We all stand on the shoulders of giants, and I invite you to stand on my shoulders to reach higher than I ever will. While the strawberries did take me 4 months to get through all of that crochet, I was actually able to make this dress in 3 weeks. Why? Because I'm doing this full time now. So a huge thank you to my wonderful patrons, a huge thank you to Merge Gardens for sponsoring this video, and a huge thank you to you for watching. If you want to support the channel directly and get some exclusive content like how I patterned the bodice, you can check out my Patreon, but you can also break a needle on that like button for me to tell the YouTube robot that it should show the video to other people. You could leave a comment and tell me what you've been working on, or send this video to a friend or your mom, because this video was brought to you by viewers like you. So thank you. Bye. Thank you to the patrons: Alec, Lady Senshi, Rembulan Cosplay, MT Gret, Free Wings Cosplay, Jenna, Ashton, Constance, Frosty Blade, Rory, Kimberly, Tam Tam, Ray Spark, Legfish, Swingularity, Amanda, Paul, Joby, GT Cosplay, Zheepy, Cal, Sanzuffle, Flair, Claudia, Katie, Snot Muncher, Allison, Queen Platypus, Riri Rose 16, Taylor, Tessa Bow, Haley, Alyssa, Max, Akima Aki, Chibi Lise, Rainbow Lola, Gloom Shroom, Infinite Salad, Meba, Kel, Hubasta, Mads, Ollie Boondingles, The King Theory, Bagda, Paint It So, Sky, Ash, Sleepy Ellie, Audrey, Allison, Spacey Stitches, Foxy McLoxy, Sunny, Coco Yumi, Skasa, Ariana, Articus, Minor, Raina, Food Penguin, Emmy, Alyssa, Stephanie, Katie, Experimental Blue, Toby, Gelman, Alice, Selena, Sostra, Haley, Evandaria, Samantha, Faybound, Adriana, Amber, Kim, Fennec, Emma, Kaimatsu, Block Kitty, DJ, Meredith, Taylor, Sarah, Kira Draws, Cowbones, Bianca Lunar, Gaia, Lularesh, Cosplay, Dealers, Fluffy Hair, Marcy, So Into Music, Amelia, Julian, Cam, Zen, Pin, Snip, and Claire.